So this is Adigan Pass. It is crossing the Brooks Range on the Dalton Highway, and it's actually a really, really great analogy on how this entire trip went. Definitely a little rocky, some interesting curves, crazy drivers, and, after you get on the far side, it's all downhill from there.
Ride a motorcycle with me.
All right, so I know a lot of you probably found my channel mainly because I did this Alaska trip, and I have a whole series on how the trip actually went. But I've had a lot of questions about my budgeting and how I planned for the trip, as well as some of the best places to stay or eat. So I figured it's about time to go over all that. Once you get out of the United States, most of northern Canada is pretty rural, so it really only gave me so many options to actually get to Alaska. So I did decide to take the Alaska Highway up and the Cassiar Highway back. So the actual route planning wasn't too complicated this time. I feel like there's a few different mindsets when it comes to road trip planning. There's your people that just go out there and just head in a certain direction, and when they decide to stop, they decide to stop. And then you have the opposite, which is definitely me. I do enjoy the planning process. I am very type A, and I do enjoy having a spreadsheet for literally all of that. For this trip even included, I planned out most of my gas stops. With that said, I understand planning has its limitations, and you always have to be adaptable. So while I have a general guideline of where I want to be and what I want to do, listen, if sometimes the road a different direction looks more interesting, I am more than willing to adapt and change what my plan is. I know if you're planning on this trip, budgeting and planning in almost probably an entire month away, it can be a little intimidating. But I do think breaking it down into your budget for your actual fuel costs, your lodging costs, and your food costs kind of make it a little bit more simple. And then the additional costs that you may incur, hopefully not too many when it comes to your motorcycle, but you need souvenirs and such as well. For fuel for most road trips around the US, I've been pretty consistent at being able to budget about 10 cents a mile. Unfortunately, in Canada and northern Alaska, fuel is not as readily accessible, and so there is a little bit more per gallon or per liter in certain areas. So I did up my budget to about 13 cents a mile for this trip. For lodging, my preference in lodging is cheap, quite honestly. That's one of the reasons why I also love camping. Camping, while I love being out into nature, it is one of the most cost-effective ways to actually be able to travel, and travel a lot of days in a row is, being frugal on your lodging accommodations. For this trip, due to weight and space restraints, I did choose to not camp this trip, which then made me have to go ahead and plan only hotels or staying at people's places for this trip. When I'm planning hotel lodging in the US, I've been lucky enough to look at about $100 a night for my budget. But being in Canada and Alaska, I did up it to $125 the night because the area and where some of these places actually were, and knowing that there was a couple places that I only had options that were rather expensive. Same thing goes for food. I did adjust my budget planning for this trip for the reins of food. For the most part in the US, I typically budget about $30 a day, which I think is reasonably cost effective. I do bring snacks with me, and I'm not one to get really super fancy meals on the way out either. I am vegetarian, so I do struggle sometimes in certain areas, and I knew that some of the areas in northern Canada as well as Alaska might be troublesome to find vegetarian-friendly options. But I did still go ahead and up my budget to $35 a day for food costs for this trip. So the way that I planned this trip for myself is I did leave Orlando, Florida on July 12th and went south, stayed in the Keys for a few days, and then came back to Orlando. Then stayed one night at home and then left, staying at a few friends on the way to Alaska. On my way back, After I got home, I did stay at home for 3 days until I finished it out to go back to the Keys, which was just a day trip. So while I had this trip totaled 29 days, I only spent 24 of them at an actual place besides my home, and then some of those places were at friends' houses. So my lodging costs and my total costs were a little adjusted purely for the fact that how I was planning this trip. My total budget breakdown should have been somewhere between $5,535, and my total actual costs were $4,313. Typically, obviously, you'd like to not go over budget, but I actually did really, really well here. Some of those areas that I did well in happened to be my lodging costs, mainly because I did expect to stay in Sturgis for 3 nights, when in reality, I did not stay there actually at all. I rode through it to head home. So a lot of my cost and budgeting was a little bit different, just purely for the fact that I adapted to a different plan. My fuel costs actually came out to about 11 cents a mile, so my over budgeting actually just benefited me in the long run. So besides the budget, the next most common question is, what were some of my favorite places that I got to eat or stay during this trip? For the Keys portion of the trip, I find Sweet Savannah's to always be my go-to for a key lime pie, as well as the No Name Pub for just regular general eats. It is super cute and one of the best places. I think the Alaska Highway, having kind of this undertone of a cinnamon roll competition, even if cinnamon rolls are not your thing, they're definitely my thing. Best cinnamon roll was Testa River Services and Campground. My favorite coffee shop of the entire trip wasn't until I got back into the States in Glasgow, Montana. It was called the Loaded Toad. The best food in Alaska was in Tok at the Soho Thai and Espresso. The girls that gave me the heads up about this place, I really appreciate it because this hit the spot so well, and it was a really cute little joint. All right, so best places for lodging. On the Alaska Highway itself, I absolutely love Double G Services. It's at Muncho Lake. The guys there were super nice, and the little, cute little lodge they have was great. Same thing with Buckshot Betty's in Beaver Creek, also on the Alaska Highway. Once getting into Alaska itself onto the Dalton Highway, I decided to stay at the Boreal Lodging in Wiseman instead of the Coldfoot Camp. I feel like for the price, it was way better off and a lot more quiet. I just really liked the privacy that it held, and it was really sweet being a little off the beaten path. In PrudhoeBay itself, I couldn't recommend more the Brooks Camp. However, as far as I understand, the prices have gone up since I've stayed there, but having the ability to do my laundry there, the meals were amazing, and that they had their 24-hour, it felt like a little mini gas station. I could take whatever I wanted and pack a lunch. The cost may still be effective, especially if you're traveling solo versus the double rooms at places like the Dead Horse Camp. So maybe still check out the Brooks Camp. Once I got back into, civilization of Fairbanks itself, I ended up staying at the Chenna Hot Springs Resort, which, I'm a sucker for hot springs anyway. And while, it was a little bit out of the way to go there, it was definitely worth the trip. So Chenna Hot Springs was also really awesome to stay at. 2 things that I really think you cannot miss on this trip: the hot springs at Liard, as well as taking a dip in the Arctic Ocean. For Liard, it's only $5. It is like a provincial park, and it's easy to get in. You can stay all day, which I would have loved to. However, for the Arctic shuttle, you do need to book at least 24 hours in advance, but it was completely worth planning around. There's so many places in northern Canada as well as Alaska to stay and eat. So I hope you enjoy it if you decide to go. I definitely highly recommend it, and I can't wait to go back. But if you guys have any other questions, of course, reach out into the comments and I'll try to help you out. Thanks for watching.